we're going to go ahead and do a TIE Defender guide. So the TIE Defender, even post-nerf, still a very, very powerful and versatile ship. You have a lot of ways you can play with the ship. So we're going to go over a couple of different loadouts and then how we're going to play it. I'm going to go ahead and just deploy real quick and just talk about the introduction to the TIE Defender. So the TIE Defender is one of the fastest ships in the game and one of the most powerful, but also after the patch, it's kind of, in a weird way, it's kind of fragile to ion damage, and it doesn't have a good time regenerating all of its health. So if you get hit a couple of times, you're gonna have to pull out for a long time in order to regenerate, and I'll show you why in a minute here. But it should be noted that the Defender has some of the most powerful auxiliaries in the game. It has some of the most powerful and quickest recharging cannons in the game, and its movement pattern is so evasive that even A-Wings and Interceptors have trouble tracking the Defender's movement. And so let's look at some of the loadout options here. So I have kind of two loadouts here that I have set up. These are the two loadouts that I recommend for objective play. All right. So I have the first one: burst cannon, concussion missile, cluster missiles, shaft particles, dampener hull, ray shield, and micro thrusting. And there are some specific reasons that I recommend these components. I'll go into great detail about why I pick each individual component and comparisons in a later date. But generally, like, concussion missiles and cluster missiles are just the highest damage auxiliaries that you can take on a Defender. This is for when shields are down, or if you're going on a shield generator and try to make those kinds of runs. Burst cannons are just all around super solid, super able to really destroy some stuff. Oh, I'm glad someone saw this question tomorrow. Whoops. My mistake. Anyway, so the shaft particles, they stop rockets, is the main thing. If you use chaff, stops rockets, stops ion rockets, stops lock-ons onto you, stops all kinds of stuff. Really, really powerful auxiliary. Hull, dampener hull, just very solid. I recommend this for new players. Dampener hull is fantastic for not only for reducing missiles, but also it just keeps your hull value very high, which we'll see in contrast to the deflector hull in a minute here. The dampener hull means that you take relatively no damage from collisions. Like, all ships take like certain amounts of damage based on the ship chassis they are. So you take like a reasonable percentage of your HP when you collide with something, but you won't usually like die. So most ships feel pretty similar in terms of like how much damage they take from a collision. But if you take like a deflector hull, which brings your HP down to like 120, then you really feel how much less HP that is. That's a third of how much HP you have with dampener hull. Ray shields, I take ray shields because you almost never get hit by missiles. And with this latest patch, your recharge rates are very slow with the Defender. It's about 7-8 seconds with ray shields, and then over 10.5 seconds with fortified shields. So it's actually way more important to have that regeneration, and so that's why I recommend ray shields over fortified shields just for everyone. Super, super important. Now our second loadout here, the differences here that I have are you have an ion missile instead of a cluster missile. You can use either cluster or concussion missile in the second slot. I just have concussion because I didn't change it. I actually think a cluster is pretty good too. But the ion missile is for burning the shields on the frigates. And so we're going to actually start with this one. The other thing is the deflector hull, which not only increases your there we go. Which not only increases your maximum shields, but it increases the effective shield regen, because the time it takes to fully overcharge your shields doesn't change with your shield regeneration rate. So let's talk for a little bit about the movement. How do we actually play this TIE Defender? So you'll see here I have my inputs on screen, right? You can see my sticks, you can see my boost button. My boost button is left trigger. I recommend this for everyone. You can see that I'm pressing it as I'm boosting and drifting here. And it's a tap and hold, tap and hold, tap and hold, all this good stuff. Now, every time, so here's our movement guide, right? Every time you boost and drift, at the same time that you start boosting, you put power in another system, then put power back into engines about a second later. Boost drift, power in another system, power back into engines, boost drift, power back into engines. boost drift weapons, power back into engines. Boost drift weapons, power back into engines. I'm holding the key down on the controller so you guys can see it. Boost drift, power into weapons, power back into engines. Boost drift, power and weapons, power and engines. Boost drift, power and shields, power and engines, right? And with this loop, right, you can stay at maximum energy all the time. I recommend practicing this just on its own. You can do this with simple power management, you can do this with advanced, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you follow this kind of movement and power management. If you always put your power back into engines, and you always are on a surplus of energy, that is what you want to have. It's super important to have that be your default, because you're gonna get stressed out, you're gonna get shot a lot, but if you always put your power back into engines, you'll never run out of engine energy. It'll be fantastic, right? And so this is a really powerful way to do that. I will note for the auxiliaries, I didn't get to show using the eye missile on the frigate because the frigate kind of died pretty fast, but it's not a big deal. The general idea is that you like do that all the time. So or that you just like boost in, throw an eye missile in. Even with ray shields, I only took like a quarter of my shields from that missile. So anyway, let's show how we drift around these frigates here. So if I want to drift around and shoot a frigate, I drift around the length, right? So I make it so my pitch is on the same axis as this thing. I boost and I drift. I do my regular power that I was showing you before, guys, that you want to practice. And then I just point at the ship, right? This is gonna die in a second, so lame. I might have to restart the mission, but you can see, like, I'll just demonstrate with the radar, right? At least while it's up. I'm gonna die in a second here. That all you do is you put one axis to the same. It can be your x-axis too. Doesn't matter. I use the pitch axis because it's just easier to use, or it has a little bit more maneuverability. But you have enough maneuverability that it's generally fine. And I forgot to mention the engine component. I use micro thrust because it maxes out your turn rate. So again, just make sure you keep doing your power and weapons, power back into engines, power and weapons, and power back into engines. And you'll notice that I'm taking some shield damage here, right? And I'm running out of like weapon energy and all this stuff. So what happens when you do that? Well, you still have 12 boosts in your defender. At this point where you're low on shields, low on weapon energy, just get out, do some boost skips, do some dead drifts, and start doing this loop of like power into shields, power into engines, power into weapons, power into engines while you're very far away from the fight. So you're always like doing this kind of thing where you're boosting out and boosting back in, and then when you're low on energy, you get out and you leave and you just recharge as much of your systems as you can. Just keep an eye. I'm always keeping an eye on my engine energy. I want that yellow. I want to see that yellow. I want it to be full. When it's full, I feel safe. When it's low, I feel terrified and that I'm just going to die. So I try to make that energy as high as possible. And I just keep going, right? Like boost drift, power weapons, power engines. Boost drift, power weapons, power engines. And again, simple, advanced, doesn't matter. I will make an advanced power management guide separately. That's not what this guide is about. Just know that if you're using simple power management, just pay attention to whatever I'm maxing at the time. Everything else, just for show. Has barely any effect on how I fly this. So we've gone over how to like shoot at frigates, right? We've gone over how to move. We've gone over how to use our power. So how do we make runs on the enemy flagship? I'm actually going to go ahead and show you the dampener hull properties real quick. I'll show a couple of runs with this build. Yeah. So first step, right? How do we get to the flagship without getting caught by a tractor beam? Well, if you keep doing this loop, boost drift in, right? Even if you get caught by a tractor beam, which sometimes you won't be, right? Come on, catch me if you can. Even if you get caught by a tractor beam, if you keep doing this boosting loop, you can see if I just do a couple of boost skips once I'm in, even if I get caught by a tractor beam, I can just boost around the hull, right? I'm giving myself lots of space, lots of room to maneuver, and I'm just doing the boost techs, right? And if you need detailed guides on the boost techs I'm doing, it's just a really fast, like boosting and drifting. That was deflector hull, by the way. Deflector hull makes you die real fast. Let's start with dampener hull. Do those really fast boost drifts. and just making sure I'm not boosting continuously for a very long time. So a tap and hold, right? Tap and hold. Like a double click. Throttle 0 for the acceleration out of tractor is important, kind of. More important than that is just making sure you're coming out of a drift, so that you still kind of have a buff where you are still holding some of that like momentum, so to speak. Like you're still able to go back to that maximum speed. That's more important than having 0 throttle. So how do you do a run? Boost in, 200 distance, power to engines, fire all your stuff, and then boost out. All right, so the reason for this, right, is if you have power to weapons and shields, no power and engines, if I drift in here and I let go, I'm gonna keep drifting. Like I let go a little bit ago and I just kept moving past the MC75. Again, I'm letting go right over the MC75 and I drift all the way past it, right? Let's do that again, but this I'm gonna put power and engines as I let go of the drift. Power and engines let go of the drift, and I stop right over the MC75. So this tech lets us, like power and engines increases the acceleration of your craft so that you accelerate in the opposite direction in order to stop your boost momentum, in order to counter that. So if we go in here, power to engines, let go of drift, and I stop right on top of the hull, and it gives me an easy shot. Now so we know how to move onto the shield gens, and this takes practice, guys, don't worry if you don't get it the first time. How do we use our auxiliaries? So cluster missiles, right, very powerful, 4 shots, but if you move your cursor even a little bit off of the target, you can lose your lock, right? Just like this, and if you get closer, it gets worse and worse. But the only time you're really able to like fire your cluster missiles is right under the shields. And you have to be right on top of the shield generator, right? Like this, and then you lose your lock and you can't shoot. So how do you so what do you do to fix that? Well, you target the MC75 itself, and I can look at any part of this hull, and my clusters will keep their lock. Very, very powerful stuff. So you target the hull, boost in, drift in, power to engines, throttle 0. Then fire all your stuff. Just press all the buttons. Just press all the buttons. Everything should be locked on because you should be looking at the MC75. Power to engines. Let go of drift at 200, 150, whatever. And then you drift right under the hull and you get that gen, right? Same thing. Power to engines. I'm here. I'm stopped, and I get. And I would have gotten out, but my shields were a bit too low. So watch those shields, guys. Last note about auxiliaries. Well, I actually forgot to show you guys APS. Oh well. Let's do that right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of this game. Or actually, yeah, I'm gonna exit into practice mode. So a lot of the flying to the fender guys, the way I'm teaching you, I can still show you in practice mode. It'll still be the same as a real game, roughly, excepting the shield regeneration, because you're always gonna be putting your power back into engines for this beginner guide. And you're always gonna be at like 90% plus on your engine power, almost 100% of the time. Does it make sense, guys? Like, I'm only going to go to like 4 bars of engine power, but that's not important. The important thing is that you guys keep your engine power really, really high as much as possible. It doesn't matter how much it is, as long as it's above like 2 or 3 bars of engine power. If it gets to 1 bar, you're in trouble. I'm just gonna keep mine maxed out the whole time. So now that you've say you've destroyed the shield generators, right? So I'll just show the shield generators destroyed one more time. How do you move around the MC75 and do damage the way Gas does, the way Splinter does in our defenders, right? Without damaging the without dying, right? While doing as much damage as possible without dying. And the answer to that is you do really simple, straightforward loops around the hull. I'll just show it with the shield still up, it's fine. The damage I'm doing is not important anyway. It's all about the movement. So make sure to max this. So 1, 2, 3 boosts, and I just start looping around the hull, just around the tail where the tractor beams can't reach me. Just boost, pull up, boost, pull up, tractor, guns on target, boost, power to weapons, back to engines. And remember, you want to get used to this cadence, guys. Just always practice, boost drift, power to weapons, back to power and engines. And then whenever you get low on weapon energy, just do this, right? I use APS to regenerate my shield energy. Power and weapons while I drift around. And back to shooting the cap ship. When you do this this boost skipping thing, right? Pay attention to your weapon energy, or your engine energy, excuse me, and see how it like doesn't decay, right, at the cadence that I'm doing it at. Pay attention to that, and your engine energy should only go down whenever you boost and drift. And this is something you can totally do in practice mode, because that's something they haven't changed. You can do more boosts in practice mode than you can in custom games, but practice is easier to get into, and you can really see how your boost energy is, and you can still see how your boost energy is decaying or not decaying, right? And you can see instantly how it regenerates as soon as I put power back in engines. You want to get that timing down of when you put power back in engines. Power and weapons, power and engines. Power and weapons, power and engines. Power and weapons, power and engines. Every single time. And right, doing this is how is someone going to be able to hit me? They're going to have to come at me from 2 different angles at once, because if they come at me from behind me, I just drift past them. I just do this, right? I'm already looking at the hull. Even a hit like that, because I have dampener hull, doesn't damage me too much. I have APS to regenerate my shields, and I can just keep drifting around here basically forever, no problems, no issues, right? Like, oh no, I messed up. It's a good thing I'm a defender and I only take 10% hull damage from a collision. If you do find yourself in the situation where you think you're gonna get a collision, try to let go of your drift or cancel your drift, and put your power in engines. That will make for sure that you'll lose as much momentum as possible and you won't die to a collision, right? So you don't worry about hull breaches doing this, guys. You just worry about your power management. While you're learning this, just worry about your power management. Eventually, you'll be able to really do this without much trouble at all. And you can do stuff like this, right? And you can do these kind of like other interesting angles. And you can do stuff like this and go around the front and the back and all this cool stuff. And you can go for weak spots and all this stuff. But for now, all I want you to do is practice going around the back of the MC75, back around the tail, right? Back around this midsection. Doesn't really matter particularly how far back you are, just that you're putting your power back into weapons, back into engines, using APS to regenerate your shields, and using making sure that your engine energy is always close to full, right? Every 3 or 4 drifts, when you're doing this kind of boost gasping thing, do a long dead drift and just regenerate your shields. Really, really, really strong stuff, guys. Really simple, really straightforward. And this is amazing for learning beginning power management. I recommend Defender to everyone who's starting to learn power management. It's super, super, super helpful to get an easy cadence down and to really understand how powerful the drifting playstyle is, and to get a feel for it, because the Defender really does punish mistakes, guys. Like, if you run out of boost energy or you mess up like a continuous boost like this, okay, out of power, 1, 2, and then like eventually you get enough energy back to boost, but you're kind of dead in the water for like a couple of seconds, and it can feel a lot longer if you don't have any if you don't have any shields, right? Like 1 or 2 shots can just kill you. Or if someone has ions on you, they can just kill you. I'll give a final mention to if you really like. One of the reasons I used to not recommend APS to people is because you had so much regen, that you should always be focused on using it in shields, and that's still an issue, guys. Right? Like, don't use it as a crutch. Like, if you do this and you run out of energy, don't use APS for engines. Just recharge normally. Use APS for shields, and get used to being punished for not putting your power in engines, because there's going to be plenty of times when you don't have APS, right? And you can't use that as a crutch to put your power in engines and spend a bunch of time just flying around, not really recharging your shields, not recharging your weapons. Super, super important to do that. Any suggested programs? Anti-Micro is a good one. or setting up controller keyboard keybinds on controllers, by the way, if you're interested in advanced power management, that kind of thing. That's about it for Defender, guys. Again, APS, cluster missiles, both strong options. I recommend APS a lot more now, but both are valid. Again, just make sure that the most important thing is your movement, guys. Your movement. Everything else will come if you get your movement down. Just your power management cycling and your movement. You can do this. What I'm doing right now, very simple. 2 buttons. Power to weapons, power to engines, power to shields, power to engines, boost drift, power to shields, power to engines, boost drift, power to shields, power to engines. Just like that, every time. Every time. And just keep an eye on your energy management. Keep an eye on your weapons, your shields, your lasers. Everything should be full. Your goal is always for everything to be as full as possible. You always want to be charging every system as much as possible, and it just makes your life so much easier. That's it for the Defender Guide, guys. Like, subscribe, comment. I stream on Twitch every week, most days of the week, every week from 5 p.m. to 11 p.m. EST. Check out my squad leader, Scalp Waka's guides for more content. Check out my other YouTube tutorial guides if you want more in-depth suggestions on movement or the recent patch to the Defender. And that is it for me today, guys. Have a good one.